But I do have a whole bunch of veterans here, guys. Tony, what's guys that were around back in our day at 22nd Street and Pierpoint, Jason, the Amigo, and be honest with you, you're going to get an earful of politics probably today and a bunch of things talking about the past. And a lot of it has to do with like reflecting back at what we saw and some of the things that in our heads, how we would have remedied it, where fishing game in our state has failed us, and continue to fail us. So you just mentioned that with the rock cod stuff,
Yep.
and I could see that because even like the cow cod closures, right? My brother does on the outer limits. They were doing all these studies with the cow cod, and they come out at 100. I mean, Tony, we used to fish them in 100 fathoms plus. Okay, now they're starting to see them in 30 fathoms. I would think that means there's a pretty good
It's
population
a
of them moving
positive
around,
sign.
right? Because
Yeah.
when you shut it off, it's good. So now that they have these decompression chambers, like on the outer limits, they have a decompression chamber. They bring these things up, decompress it, put a tracking tag on it, right? Find out that, okay, they catch this fish on the 60, put it back down, or excuse me, it was the 43. On the 43, they put it back down there in the 43. Where do you think it would be a week later? Give me a guess. What would you say?
I'd say probably the 60-mile bank would be the closest.
60,
Maybe the
Eastern,
9-mile
Cali.
bank.
Well, me, I would say it would stay in the same spot, but just saying, like you're saying, it's probably going to be so far away from there that they're traveling up and down. You can't really tell
They're traveling
where
with the
they
current,
are
the
at
food
any one
chain.
time.
Okay, so get this. A week later, it's outside conception. Now you look at that cow
Wow.
cod. Looks like Tony and I.
Yeah,
It looks like we're not doing any wind sprints and any distance running.
it's called
But
a cow cut for a reason.
exactly. But
Yep.
who would know that it would travel that far? And with the tracking devices now, they're able to do that. But here you got these oceanographers, and biologists, young kids out of usually Santa Barbara and stuff, making the policy
And
for all of
Davis.
us that have been around. Yeah, policy that's been around for a long time, and that is now what's driving us.
Well, then they're doing contradicting policies where they're opening deeper limits for us, and they're making it where we're fishing in these areas that they don't want us to catch cowcods, and we are catching them now because you're telling us we can fish there for other fish, and we can't keep say one, or you gotta look at what you can't put us in those areas and then say we can't keep them, and we're trying to save them with descending devices and think that's going to be okay.
Yeah, I've got some real issues with them, and I have over the years, and in almost all the cases, they've been wrong. And that goes. We just talked about the quagga mussels prior to them being introduced here. We went. We had a meeting. I sat on the board with the Fish and Game, and we had an advisory board for the state, and it brought a bunch of the guys in from our side of the industry. You know, Vic Cutter and Dave Myers from Fenwick and Pat Marley with Basket. I mean, all these guys from the industry we met, and we tried to resolve how we stop the quagga mussels from entering the lakes and transferring from lake to lake. And we could have done it. We said, well, build a trough, bring your bass boat in there, fill all your live wells up with a bleachy type solution, kill everything,
Yep, down
drain
in
it
your
up.
hole real quick and
Right,
drop it out.
right. They never did it. And now you can't fish these lakes, or you have to tag your boat for a certain amount of time. And the only serious guys are guys like Butch Brown. He's got 4 bass boats at different lakes. Well, I refuse to do that because of the stupidity of our state, decisions that they make.
Yep.
And it has to do with not having fishermen like us involved in it. And you're leaving
witnessed
the
all
kids,
the illegal.
biologists out of UC, wherever, you know, and having an 18, 20 something year old make a decision based on that, and these guys.
Well,
No.
who's the biggest, advocates for wildlife is going to be the hunters and the fishermen, and people they don't realize that is what
Yeah,
it is.
and we know. I mean, we know.
We see it
You've
every
got
day.
enough on your limit. We're not going to completely wipe out our own supplies. We're not that stupid.
Hey, boys, let me ask some
But yeah.
questions here. 'Cause
Oh,
we're
here
gonna
we
fall
go.
way
Oh
behind.
my God! Look
All
at the
right,
board.
Matthew wants to know who the heck Tony is. And so give us a brief history of who you are. What boats did you run? How did you get into the business? What age?
I was down at Redondo Beach the same time Phil Frieman was with Paul back in
My
71.
brother. Yeah.
We knew the same people. We went to the same group. We ran the same crowd. I worked on the Pursuit with Gary Emplum, John Gray, Frank Grace, Gary LaCroix. Then I moved on to actually I worked for the city of Redondo first for 2 years, 2.5 years. The Pinhead worked up the second deck. And then I got opportunities to go on the Pursuit with Gary Implum. And then I went to work on the Little G with John Gray, Elliot's 65-foot yacht. And then I went to work with Roger Hess and Kenny on the Tornado. I got my license when I was on the Pursuit, and I started running the Tornado in '78. I ran it for 2 years, and I went to work on tugs and water taxis.
All right, beautiful. What a history. And Jason, you, of course. Go ahead. Who are you?
Well, I'm the galley chef on the Amigo, of course. I mean, I've been fishing my whole life. I've been doing this for a couple of years now out on the boat, and been making the rounds. So
Dan Smith wants to know, albacore, yes or no this year?
I think so. I think so. We got cooler water, you know. We got cooler water, and just based on that, you know, they're seeing more and more trophy around. You know, I think it's going to happen. You know,
Tony,
I think so too.
you do?
Yeah.
Why?
The cycle. And you keep talking about it.
eventually it's got to hit, right?
yeah,
It's
you
gonna
know,
throw all the players off.
Red or black, and one of them's got to
that's
hit.
right.
eventually,
That's right. We're betting the long shots. You know,
Well, I
Yeah,
can only
but
hope for
whatever.
albacore because I'm sick of bluefin, to tell you the
Well, you
truth.
know, I think it would be a refreshing deal for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Ronald
that's
Tabata. Ronald, thank you for being here. One thing nobody is talking about with all the windy, cold weather is upwelling. He'd love to hear you captains and Jason discuss that a little bit.
You go first, Jason.
Me go first? I'm the least experienced with this stuff, but I'm a private boater, so I mean, I can kind of understand the thing. Actually, I've been out of Catalina on my private boat lately, and the water's been actually pretty clear, nice and blue for as much wind as there's been. So if there is a lot of upwelling to bring up all the plankton and all that, I mean, it's not bringing up a lot of dirty water, which is nice. I mean, the more that comes up, I mean, the more the merrier, because it's like when we look for slack tide, the plankton come up, all that stuff. It's like when you're in Morro Bay, that's why that's so popular with whales and everything. That brings in the small bait that feed off that, and that brings in the bigger fish from, you know, yellow. Hopefully, we see more yellowtail, dorado, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we always fish the blue water, you know, for those fish anyway, those longies, you know. And so we're just hoping. We're just hoping. It's like anything else. There's a certain amount of guesswork involved in it, you know, and praying that they come, because if they do, it's been a while. It's going to bring. It's a great fish to get youngsters or people that haven't been involved in fishing. It's an easy fish for them to catch, and it's great eating. Face it. And let me tell you something. The phone will be ringing off the hook at all the landings if that happens, you know. So I have a good suspicion that they'll be here.
It'd be nice to fish that light gear too.
Yeah, you know what? Like you said too, you know, almost everybody throw a live squid, live sardine, but you know the art of fly line and choke is going to separate the men from the boys too. You know, and it's more of a finesse deal, and that's going to bring back a whole different skill set, which I think we need
try
to
harder
implement
with
again.
anchovies.
Yeah, you got to work, you know.
Some weights on the line instead of all just fly lining.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Or
no,
go back to the
I
clear
don't like
bobbers.
it. No, I want to make sure that my baits hit that water and they go down and away. So, and there's a number of ways to hook it to get them to do that. But I mean, that's, you know, they got those big old eyes, so you know they got a pretty good sight, almost like, you know, like a bluefin almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just getting that whole different skill set back into it, the lighter line and everything too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Gary Bush is up in Northern California. He wants to know what's up with the bluefin tuna. Are they gone? Are they down?
Well, you said
What's the
what's
deal?
up? They're just down, I think. You know, I don't think they've gone
I think
anywhere.
they're offshore a little more, possibly.
yeah.
If we're not seeing them, that's where they are.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that they've been up north a little more too, so I think they're farther north
That's
than
right.
they've ever been.
That's right.
So we're kind of, instead of us being the front runner, like they're moving up, we're kind of in the middle. Not necessarily right now, but I know there's fish above us for sure.
You know, you get a lot of that stuff in the cold water, like the squid at Clemente and places like that. You know, they got their noses down in the mud. They're just feeding, so
Yeah.
they don't have to come up.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
don't have to worry about the cold, water either. They can
Right.
create their own needs. So
Exactly.
All right, very good. William wants to know, you gave the cow cod example going to Conception. Danny wants to know about the tracking of black sea bass. He says they move quite a good distance also.
Yeah, and there's really no shortage of them either, to be
No.
honest with you.
I've caught
They're
a
out.
lot.
And you know, it's something that, once again, I'm going to get on our state. It's stupid to allow 300-pound black sea bass roam unharvested, because what do they eat? They're eating
Everything.
exactly. So you don't think, why aren't they thinking about that?
You have to coal it, that's what they do
Exactly.
with bass, in lakes, you have to take some of the big fish out.
Absolutely. Yeah, because they eat a tremendous amount of other fish, whitefish, sheephead. I mean, you name it.
And they're that big for
They're
a reason.
big.
They're smart.
Absolutely.
Robert Graver says, good evening, Phil, Danny, and the Friedman Adventurers family. Happy Thursday evening. Dan Smith, hello, Phil. Captain Danny, Captain Tony, Chef Jason. Good one, Tony. Phil said, so, love it. Thanks, Tony. Rubbing it in on me on the albacore. Gary Bush, any thoughts or comments on high sticking and breaking good rods in San Diego?
I recently saw a thing that was done on one of the boats down at H&M, and it was right in front of the landing, and they had 2x4s on a stand there, and they're sitting there and breaking rods. And to me, coming from the rod manufacturing side over the years of G. Loomis, and just fishing with Leon back in the old Sabre days, and working our way through, all the different manufacturers over the years, it was probably one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. Why would you intentionally break it? Number one, they're high sticking these things. They're getting on it. They put it on a high piece, which would be higher than the rail, and they're cranking down. Now, on that bend, I'm going to tell you another thing. You're getting 1/10 of the pressure, and these guys obviously don't know that. You're getting 1/10 of the pressure at that bend, and you're getting 1/10 the lift.
And we're fishing a lot of different rods too. Most of the rods now are going to be, I like to fish a fast tip because we're fishing with Spectra with not a lot of stretch. So that's the other thing too. So you have your weakest point at the point where you're at the bend. So of course you're going to snap it. It's like me taking my slow pitch rod and trying to high stick it. No, you point the rod at the water and wind in.
If you want to break your line off, Tony, we get hung on the bottom, right? What do? You point
Point
it.
it at it.
You point it.
and
That's
lock
where you're
down
going to
the
get.
deck.
That's where you're going to get the most pressure. Okay. We once did a study up at G. Loomis, and this is with straight graphite, so it's even more. It's higher technical and it's more fragile than glass. But when we had rocket launchers set at different angles, and we had it on a forklift, and this thing would pull, and we had them set in a rocket launcher, and so like at 30 degrees, which is down here, folks, this 30-pound stick broke at 62 pounds of pressure, straight graphite, but it's angled down. So, like if you're fighting, and Phil will tell you when we were fighting those bluefin out at Cortez, I'm fishing a 30-pound stick, very similar to that. And I had it on the rail and down. And, to me, and that's straight graphite, it's the only way you're going to get a 60 to 100-pound fish on 30-pound, right? If you go to 45 degrees, you have 45 pounds of pressure. That's still a substantial amount. But when you get to 90, which is straight up from the rail, it drops off considerably to about 30 pounds. And so you got half the pressure that you are when you got it pointed down. Okay, as you go up now, it really drops off.
Yeah, and like we said, if you have some of the fast tip where the bend point isn't deep at the thickest point of the rod.
Yeah.
I mean, I've snapped rods trying to bounce fish that were small.
That's
just
right.
For that reason.
That's right. If you bounce the fish, the whole thing is you'd point it down, get it going, get that fish moving, and you kick it out of gear, right?
Yep,
Take
you
all the
get it
pressure
up
off,
and
and the
it
fish is
goes
flying over. But there's no pressure on the tip. But, when you're now above 90 degrees, okay, it drops off substantially to like 15 pounds of pressure.
Yeah, less than what your reel can even do.
And at a high stick, which these guys are doing on these bars, so at a high stick, when you're straight up and down, you got 1/10 the pressure. You'll break that tip. Think about it. It's straight up and the tip's going straight down. It only takes a few pounds of pressure to break it. Why in the world would you fish it at that angle? The idea, especially if you're on a boat, you want to get these guys conditioned to, you can control the fish better, you're going to land the fish better if you have more pressure on it. So it's teaching them how to fish it down low, not up here. And so when I saw that display and they're breaking rods, I'm thinking, to me, it was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. I'm sorry, these guys are on boats, but unless they've actually ran the pressure test and equated it, and they're doing it with glass rods. I'm fishing straight graphites. I never broke one, but there's a reason why.
Yep.
You have to you have to have that understanding.
Yeah, and it's knowing
Yeah.
your equipment too.
Exactly.
It's knowing your equipment
That's exactly it. And it's
and what you're comfortable with.
yeah.
I mean, what I'm comfortable with is not the same as you are. and
Right.
it's-
Well, as you get older, so the graphite's probably 1/3 the weight or half the weight, but it's higher performing.
Mhm.
So if it's old guys, if that's going to give me an edge, I'll take it.
Yeah, holding it all day. And
Oh yeah,
Makes a
it's not going to
difference.
fatigue you,
yeah.
and it's going to give you a longer cast. It's going to recover faster because, listen, if you have something that's light and you put weight on it, right, it's going to recover very fast.
Mhm.
If you put something heavy on it, it's going to be doing this.
More of a spring action.
Yeah. So when you have a glass rod that's 3 times heavier than the graphite, you've got to recover your own weight before you could do any lifting. So so having that weight, it's a deterrent to performance. So put it this way: for the guys that are fishing the glass rods, I'm just giving you an analogy. Okay? But you have the glass rods and you have graphite rods. Will you be flying an F-22 made out of fiberglass or one out of graphite? There's a reason. Stronger, lighter, higher performing.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a
Okay,
customer
I'm
come
just
out
giving
of
it-
Tornado. He gave us a lot of graphite rods back in the day, in the 70s. His name was Noel, and he used to come out once a week. Here's a new rod. Here, try it. He worked for Fenwick, and they're beautiful rods.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of the Fenwick prototypes. Dave
Beautiful.
Myers and Vic Cutter and those guys. That's when Fenwick was down at Huntington Beach, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff, boys. Let's keep moving on here. Tony,
Yeah, cool.
I'm a resident of Redondo. What was it like in those days, in the old days, compared to what it's like now? So let me just help the question out a little bit. I want to hear a story from you. Like, I remember one day on the blank, we blah, 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 blah. And then, Danny, you too. What was Redondo like in the Santa Monica Bay? I can tell you, man. It was freaking.
It was like a Disneyland of fishing. Some of the best guys in the industry came from Redondo. They went to San Diego and became somebody.
Can you name some of those guys?
Bobby Vile, Pat Conklin, who else? They all went to, Grouper went to work for Lepresti on the Royal Polaris. Bunch of young guys. They all got their licenses.
Well, yeah, Norm and his brother, Dave Kagawa, they all.
Richard,
a lot of
guys,
those guys.
the
Yeah.
guys that went to Washington opened up fishing camps. Who else? See,
Hey, boys, just real quick, breaking news. There's a guy that posted that the Oceanside Pier is engulfed in flames right now. It looks
Oh, you got to be
looks
kidding.
pretty bad from what we're looking at. Just to let you know that, we'll
I'll be
try to
damned.
keep you updated here on
Oh,
the
my
show.
God.
Tony, I
Yeah.
think this guy wants to know, though, a fishing story. He's
fishing
cool with all
story.
these great guys, but he wants to hear, like, did you ever catch 300 barracuda? Did you ever catch albacore? How about sea bass fishing? Rake your brain there. I know it's
I
hard.
know.
Tony,
but
you
it's
had
hard.
you had to have caught bluefin in the canyon.
yeah,
'Cause I got one right outside
you
the pier.
go.
Right outside the
yeah,
pier.
on the city of Redondo we did
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Where's
With-
it?
with
These
Roy
guys
Peters.
don't know where the canyon is. Describe it to us.
Um,
How far outside of the
maybe a
harbor?
mile and a half, 2 miles max, next to the sea buoy. We'd anchor
Yeah.
right there,
Yeah.
and
It's amazing.
a lot of
But,
fish.
Yeah.
I could tell you stories about seiners going there at night with no lights and fill the boat up with 40, 50, 60 ton of bluefin back in those
You're not
days.
talking about the Jimmy Buns and stuff like that. are
No,
you?
no,
No, you
I
went
can't
in.
name any of those.
Yeah, we
people.
went out and that couldn't have been. Those days.
No.
Yeah,
but-
foggy night, man. and the
Foggy
next day,
night. There was,
Couldn't tell
Fish
who it
with
was.
net burns
oh yeah,
floating
net,
around.
a lot of boats out there. They all caught them at Catalina.
How about barracuda bite? Can you remember any good barracuda fishing?
Yeah, with Roy Peters, and we had some real good days. Limits, big bonita, 12, 14 pound bonita back in the day. Sea bass was not that much, but not like Dipley. Dipley always knocked him out. He was always at the right spot.
You remember Dipley had like 113 on the Dinah Lee? You
With only,
remember that?
I think you only had like 12 or 13 people.
Yeah.
They all had limits. They were free gaffing them. That's how shallow water they were in. Dipley was an animal.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He killed everything. And a good guy too. Real good guy.
Dipley was a character, that's for sure.
You got a
He
good
was
John
for
Dipley
sure.
story, Danny?
You know
For the
what?
John
I got a
Dipley
funny
fans out
one.
there?
I got a funny one. You know the same guys I'm talking about. Frank Redlew, Mike's dad.
Yeah.
He put in all the controls, the Morse controls on every boat on
Right.
the West Coast that I know.
Very
of.
knowledgeable man.
He's nicest, most helpful, and most knowledgeable guy
Yes.
I've ever met. This is Mike's dad, Frank. And so Frank built this boat out of scratch. He got a hull from Sleek Craft, built it to make it a little sport boat. So he and I would go to Catalina and stuff on the weekends. But when those albacore came in the channel here, I don't even remember Freddie Ichikawa.
Yeah.
Okay, Freddie was with me, and he had another 4 of us on Frank's boat. So Frank's letting me run the boat. And I just get off the Mustang, and these 80-pound albies were out in the channel here. So I see a spot of fish come up. And like the Mustang, I take the throttles and push it down. But instead of going like 11 or maybe 12 knots, full bore, I push it down, and Frank's boat jumped to like 54 miles an hour. And I'm looking at this school of birds, and I go, where'd the guys go? And I look at Frank, Merle, and Freddie are hanging over the back of his boat. I mean, it would just when I hit it, they just went because Frank's boat just went, boom, it was just like a
Whiskey
jet.
throttle.
Oh my god! And I slid on this bunch of fish, and we went bendo on those big albies, right? And we're fishing these things. All of a sudden, I hear this noise. I come up and because he didn't see our faces, all I see is Queen of the Sea, the bow. And I looked up at John, and all of a sudden I see backwash. He put it in reverse when he saw Red Lou and me and Fred, all of us. And I said, John, that's not how you fish albacore.
Hey, Jason, you've been fishing a long time. How's fishing now as it was compared to a long time ago? And like the business, how's the business nowadays?
Oh man, it's a lot different now. Back when I first started, my father had our own personal boat, so we were here in Long Beach, so we did a lot of the harbor stuff. And that was back when we would fish the breakwall a lot and horseshoe kelp when I actually had kelp.
Yeah.
And I didn't fish a lot up in Santa Monica Bay, but we always did. Palos Verdes was always great fishing.
Yeah.
We'd always fish off marine land, that
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
Marine Land.
And
Yep.
It's our age, our days.
Rocky Point, that kind of stuff. But I mean, I remember remember fishing the flats, the Redondo, or excuse me, the Huntington Flats. That was the thing. Now we're never out there fishing anymore. It's just not that there's less fish, just the times change and cycles change. I mean, we all talk about having all those bass that we were catching, and then we had all the Humboldt squid come in and eat them all, and we're trying to come back on that. I mean, I just remember there. You know what it is? A lot less pressure. I noticed it because I did a lot of hoop netting the last few years. That there's just a lot more people out in the water, and it just puts a lot more pressure. And not necessarily more fish are being caught because not everybody knows how to catch them. There's just more people out there on all the spots, and there's only so many spots you can fish. So I mean, it's just a change of everything has to change. And people get excited over stuff, and you can't deny people coming into the sport fishing community. You got to grow it. And that's just the thing that happens. We got to expand and figure out new things and go from there.
Well, those sand bass, we all remember they were a savior for us.
Mm-hmm.
Just before we'd head down to San Diego, the season would come up. Even on the way, sometimes on the way to Catalina, we'd stop for a little while, and you could almost get a limit of sand bass in the dark,
Yep.
and then boogie, go across Catalina and finish off your day. But you remember those? I mean, it was
So those are
crazy.
great
Yeah,
trips. Those
they
twilight
were.
trips where you
Yep.
went from like 6 to midnight.
Yep.
I mean, it was fishing scampies. You really didn't even need a bait. You put one strip of squid and just laugh the whole time. And every drop you catch a fish and bring it in, and
It was
you keep
fun.
1 or 2 fish or whatever. But you catch 50 in a night. No problem.
Those were the
But
best.
you know what affected? I think the locals fishing is when they shut down the 2 power plants, the one in Redondo and the one in Huntington Beach, because they were getting cooling water from the ocean to cool the generators and pumps at these power plants. Once they stopped that, a lot of the stuff moved. The yellowtail, the tuna from Redondo, the
True.
sand bass,
True.
and whether other fish they were catching in Huntington Beach, they found some place to go because they lost their food source and that warm water they used to like.
That's true.
They
Tony, talk about the bubble hole in Redondo.
Yes.
And the amount
Oh,
of yellows that used to get.
Oh my
There
God.
were guys that would come from Pedro and come inside the harbor and fish.
Yeah,
Right?
with Louis Abbott, we used to go in there with the pursuit. We had a bad day at Catalina. We stopped at the bubble hole and catch limits yellowtail for 20, 30 people.
It
And
was unbelievable.
this is like you can take a rock and hit the Redondo Pier.
Yeah, or you could
Yep.
throw a rock and hit the boat. That's how close we were.
You would drive over the bubble hole and just see them stacked.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
We row out there on those skiffs.
And
What
the
was
big
it,
bonita, too.
Yeah, big bonita stuff. But what are those skiffs? $3? You had to
Yeah,
have a
running for the
big stuff,
day.
And then we'd go out to the receiver, and we thought it was highway robbery, but it was a quarter of squid. But
Right.
every squid was guaranteed.
Yep. Those were the days.
Yellowtail, you know. But yeah, no,
When they
it
shut
brings
those
back
co-
somewhere. Those are things guys would, it's not saying it'll never happen again, but they sure were good days.
Yeah, they were.
You remember
Unbelievable.
going up to El Segundo area and fishing those grumpy sand bass?
Yep.
Those things were bitching up there.
Yep. Did we free swimmers fall on them up? Barracuda, everything.
Unbelievable.
Those were the days.
Yeah, yep.
Well, are those days gone forever?
Well, they shut down the power plants and they got the ships coming into El Segundo. I'm sure that has something to do with slowing down the bite.
All right,
Yeah.
hey, let's go to some more
Yeah.
questions. Hit that like button, everybody. There's a lot of people watching, a lot of questions. No way, Artie. He says, wish I would have had this kind of show when I was a teen, when I was heavy into fishing. Great job, guys. Thank you so much, Artie. PNS Hornjack up there in Montana saying, good evening, gentlemen. Sorry, we've been MIA lately. We're preparing to move to Utah. All right, we send you all our best, Patrick and Sarah. Hope you have a successful move. Gary Bush, thank you, Danny. Was wondering if I was the only person thinking that. Much appreciated. Talking about the high sticking. Rick Slater, I agree with you, Danny. Did you know the Oceanside Pier is on fire? Rick is the guy who broke that, and then we researched it a little bit. It looks like, I can't tell, but I don't want to say it's engulfed in flames, but it looked
Oh,
pretty
my
bad,
God.
right? When it
Wow.
looked like a really damaging fire, but we'll try to look at that for you. Q Ball says, hi, Danny. Hi, Phil. What's up, Friedman family? Daniel Lightfoot, good afternoon. Phil and Danny, they're at Michael E. Moon's ball game.
Well,
they're
so we're not going to
here.
have a fish count tonight off Michael. So that, little Michael.
Right.
Yeah.
Jason, care to address how easy or difficult it is to be in the sport fishing business in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a tough industry, especially right now. I mean, between fishing and weather and people expecting and being, we've had such great fishing for bluefin and this stuff, you get kind of spoiled and people think that, when you go out that you're going to catch fish every time. And it directly relates on how much money we're making out there. I mean, if you look at it right now, yeah, there's certain boats that are getting out all the time, but like us on the Amigo, I mean, we're scheduled for a couple day and a half trips coming up during the week, but there's no reservations. And then when we do have reservations, like for this weekend, we have crappy weather and have to cancel. So, I mean, it's just a go round of trying to get through where I pretty much have to have another job or I can't really do this. And it, really shouldn't be that way. And then we go out there and people aren't tipping like they used to. There's fuel surcharges now. Everything's more expensive, so it's just a matter of, even the food's more expensive. So there's not as much money I mean, I totally understand. It's, to go fishing, get the rods and reels you need is so expensive. And then to come out and pay for the trip is expensive. And that, to expect a tip and pay for food and all that, it's very tough. And it's just getting harder as we go. We see gas prices going up every day. It's just getting tougher and tougher. And more people are going. And they're closing more areas off. And we're having to do, I mean, every couple of months I get an email saying this regulation has changed.
And they're changing the fish limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the
There's
time.
too many politics that have been involved.
Yeah.
And I mean, look at the cost of fuel. Tony, you remember we were paying what, 17 cents?
Yeah.
A gallon for
25 cents a
diesel?
gallon.
Yeah. And now look.
It's over $5 right now.
Yeah.
I was
Why?
burning, I was
Why?
burning
Because
400
we got
gallons a
some
day.
idiots that
going to Clemente.
shuts off the spigot.
Right.
And then what are we doing? We're fishing for bluefin, driving in circles all night. So we're burning fuel all night too, as opposed to being anchored up. And it's just,
It's
and what
brutal.
do you do,
It's brutal. Yeah. And some of that, like we just talked about, it's, the political part of it's helping kill some of the industry off. and shame on them.
It's just turning
There's
people
no
off.
reason.
It's
Yeah.
just turning people
Yeah,
off. It's
absolutely.
Like me personally. All right, so it's easy to go out on a sport boat and pay and have somebody put you on the fish, and then okay, how many do I keep of this fish? Tell you ID the fish. This is a chunklehead. This is that. How about you go on your own personal boat? How do I know all those things? Yeah, I'm supposed to have a book. I'm supposed to learn all this stuff. So, and most of these people aren't as dedicated as I am. They're a weekend warrior. How do you expect that person to know all these things? So they go out there and they do it, have their boat for a year or two. They get rolled by the cops and they can't ID the fish. And what they're supposed to go to school for it, it just is a turnoff to be able to go do it.
Okay, I got one for you. Happened right here, straight down at the dock. I have my passengers, and we would always check their limits, check the sizes for them, right? So they're legal calicos. Well, one of these guys they had 10 calicos and a Johnny Bass. So one of the fish and game people come up, it happened to be a gal, had him open up the sack right on the dock, dump the fish out on the dirty dock, and say there was 11 calicos. I says, no, it's not 11 calicos. There's 10 calicos in the Johnny Bass. No, that's a calico. I said, that's a Johnny Bass. That's a calico. That's a rockfish, technically. Tony, we've seen it. And it happened right straight down on the main dock here. And I went off the handle. George Meal came flying off the new hustler who was right behind me and called him an idiot, blah, 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 started yelling too. But we all got it. But see, when you're dealing with the politics part, as opposed to guys that have been doing this for a living, there's a big problem. And that's also like the fuel cost. Is the fuel cost now necessary? If we let nature take its course and have somebody at the head of the wheel that would source our own fuel in our own country, that makes a big difference. So
like,
people remember how you vote when it comes time, because that's been a problem.
they got to increase.
It's-
They got to increase the fish limit. You pay $500 to go for a 1-day trip, and you only catch 2 tuna. It's insulting. Back in the day, we used to catch 10 albacore, 10 bluefin tuna, 20, 30 sack limit per bag. How can you justify $500 for 2 bluefin tuna?
Yeah,
It's not justifiable.
It's brutal, and I agree with you too, because what happens, it's kind of a self-imposed thing. I'm not going to take that many, because by the time I get in, if I send it off to processing, my wife's
Yeah.
going to come unglued, and particularly because you're spending, 4 figures in fish cleaning, and you're giving it all away. Yeah, granted they're vacuum packed and everything, but like bluefin, you want to share. And my dad's always said, let everybody enjoy it while it's fresh, and it's true,
Right.
especially with bluefin.
Yep.
Because a lot of people are going to have it sashimi and poke or whatever,
Especially
So
tuna.
yeah, it is better to give it all away, and I do. I vacuum pack my fill, but even then, now our cost on vacuum, to having the fish process, it's unbelievable.
Well, here's a good example. I had friends of mine catching sea bass the last couple of years, 5, 10, 15 ton of fish, gill netting. But they're not limited to what they can catch. But you go on a sport boat, you're only allowed one, and you pay $300 for fishing to go one night overfishing overnight. That's not justifiable. A 20-pound fish
Yeah,
for
it needs to be-
$300
There needs to be equity
and 2 red
across the board
snapper.
on the way these things are done. Yeah.
Well, and the problem too is where the people that fish, like you were saying, we are the ones that are the conservators the most. We only take what we're going to keep,
Right.
Or that we can use. And the person that's in the public that isn't around us, they think we're going to take 20 fish every time. If I'm a hunter, I'm going to shoot 10 deer one time. And they don't look at it as, hey, we're going to take it, use it. We're going to go out again and use it. I went hoop netting multiple times a week, and I was giving it out and giving it away to my friends. And,
Who can't afford it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you think I put a dent in
You're
anything?
feeding the
No.
needy.
No,
the
exactly.
The commercial guys out there put more of a dent than I put in anything. Catching,
Yep.
But in the legislation, this is what always got me and a lot of us captains out here, and you could recognize that too, was that you'd have these fishing game people, putting these regulations on and not understanding the industry, not even knowing the difference between a Johnny and a calico,
Right.
and not understanding these things that, we don't always whack them. You have a great day. Okay. Well, we put if you're smart enough, you self-impose a limit on it because of your fish processing costs or your ability to haul it and give it away.
Yep.
You
Just
know?
as an example, look how many times you see on the count this many calico bass released. You see it at 5 kept, 35 released. That shows that we're throwing back fish.
Yeah.
We're looking after our own ecosystem as well.
Sure,
but-
sure.
It doesn't do us any good to wipe out all the fish.
No.
It doesn't. It
No.
doesn't.
But look at the seiners. They carry 100 ton of fish, 100 ton of tuna, and they wrap a set. They have 120 ton. What do they do with the other 20 ton? They
Yeah.
kill it. They
20
send it back.
tons
It starves. It dies.
going down to the crabs and lobsters.
Yeah, the crabs and wherever.
the
The
tier-
ecosystem eats them up.
Right. The way the system's tiered is really still messed up, but that's typical of our state.
Too many.
Yeah.
Just the rules need to be changed.
And they change it so often. That's the other thing is we were talking about the fish and game people, and this isn't even to the officers. It's tough for them to know all these different regulations
Sure.
and all these different rock fish
Sure.
and know all this stuff. Like you said, they misidentified it because she wasn't informed enough to even be out there to see it. That's part of the problem.
That's
too.
it. You're right. You're right. The brunt is going to be right in the front lines by the fishing game officers rather than the political side. And a lot of that I saw being done by kids in college, interjecting their opinions to go into legislation. Well, they don't know squat. Like I said, they don't know the difference between a Johnny bass and a calico bass. So there's where I have my big problems, and common sense. Things like we tried to get them to bring that trough to kill the quagga mussels off. Oh, well, they boo-hooed that. And guess what? Now you can't even put your boat in the water because the quagga mussels took over. So whose fault was that?
Yeah, how much would it have cost? And they still charge you they charge you for the sticker.
That's
So
right.
that money could have went towards the bleach for that.
Yeah,
Or a little tablet you put in your
Yeah.
in your bilge, that would kill everything. It's
Yeah.
little things like that. It's the common sense thing isn't always done.
well, it's not always done. It's almost never done
Yeah,
on the
pretty
state
much.
side.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're having fun, they want to take it away. So
Yeah. Well,
if you have a smile, they try to turn it upside down.
You remember the kelp cutter used to go to Clemente and
Yes.
they grind up
Thin
the
it
kelp?
up, thin it out and stuff.
How
yeah.
many fish did they kill doing that process? 2 or 3 times a week. They take it in San Diego to use it to make chemicals or ice cream or some sort of
Yeah,
medical
yeah.
product.
And
mean-
all the small fish. We're not talking about big fish. We're
Yeah.
killing for those
Sure.
where all those little small fish.
Right.
That's
And the
true.
kelp.
That's true.
And they're killing them up, grinding
That's
them
true.
up, mixing them with the kelp.
Yeah, you had 2 tiers of system,
And they're killing the
designed for-
ecosystem too.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, boys, and we're on an abbreviated show. I hate this, man, because it's almost 5:30. We're just rolling along here, but we got more questions. We're gonna keep this going
Okay.
until Tony shows up with a fillet knife and throws us out of here. Q Ball says he's been following me, Phil, for 35 years. Q Ball, 2 things. Number 1, God bless you. Number 2, there is therapy out there for you. I will tell you that right now. Rocky Boy 357. Some of the deckhands and captains are very, very rude. That's why I don't tip anymore. Do the basic. So 2 things can be true. 1, he could have run into some captains and crew that were real disrespectful. 2, I'm telling you, the boats that I fished on recently, Island Spirit, the Californian, the Independence, you couldn't ask for more polite, hardworking crews. So those kind of blanket statements like all of these people are bad, or I think you just got to go on a case-by-case
Yeah.
basis, and you get good service, you tip.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm speaking from experience. When I'm on the Amigo, I've only heard for the last 2 years, you guys are the best crew I've seen, this and that. So we work very hard, and that's what we work for. And it's not like we expect a tip or anything like that. It just matters. You're going to tip a server 20%. You can't tip us something when we're tying your lines. I mean, it's one thing your guys
You're staying up all night,
I've seen-
prepping
yeah.
and driving, and
yeah, trying to make bait for you, those kind of things. And I totally understand if the crew isn't worth it, then don't tip them. It's like a bad server. But when people aren't tipping and you're doing great service and you're catching fish, it's kind of a slap in the face. And it happens every trip. There's people that don't tip at all.
But it all comes down
And
to
they
the
want you to tie
captain.
every line for them. It's like, well, it's not, my job is to help you. I'm the
Yeah.
galley chef. I'm not here to tie your lines, like.
yeah.
All right,
No,
you were gonna say
absolutely.
something? No.
It all comes down to the captain. He's in charge. He
Yeah,
controls
he
the
runs
show.
operation.
If you
That's
got a
right.
bad crew member,
That's
bad
right.
apple, he's got 2 reasons. Either fix it or get rid of them.
And trust me, we don't like
Absolutely.
bad crew members either.
Because
No.
when
We
it
push-
goes
we push
down,
them out too.
No,
yeah, when
that's
it goes
true.
down and shit's hitting the fan, you need everybody on the same page.
That's right. That's right. It's a team.
It's a
Yeah,
team
Team.
effort.
I mean, I was very blessed with the over the years, the crews that I had, you know.
'Cause they were
all
trained
considered
right.
family.
Well, and also too, now there's such a competition. If you have a reputation for not being a good crew, like they said, then you're not going to get a lot of people out there. And you see it. Every goes online. I'm going on one of these 3 boats. What would you suggest? And people will put their opinion. And if you aren't good to the people, or you have bad food, or don't have an RSW, people are going to know that and not go out on your boat for those reasons.
I was doing some searching one night, months back, about how that all the boats in San Diego got ripped up by people because of one bad crew member.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
mean,
that's not fair either.
One
No,
bad,
it's
one
not.
bad apple goes
That's
with
what I'm saying,
everything.
yeah.
One
I mean,
bad
it ripped the
passenger,
crew up on Yelp,
Yeah,
on these other complaint sites.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's not fair. That's not fair. Like, these guys work way too hard.
Oh,
and
now
you know the
it's-
same
because-
people I'm talking about too.
Yeah.
These are guys are legends, and they got a bad apple in their group.
And we work super hard. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, as me as the chef, I deckhand as well. As I always tell, I'm up at 5 a.m. I usually don't take a nap. I'm up till 10 o'clock at night at least if we're doing dinners. And then I'm up again at 5 o'clock. So figure that out.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the extra duties I'm doing.
Well, what about it? You get into a wide open bluefin bite in the middle of the night.
exactly.
Usually everybody's on deck.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's it
So
burn-
they
it
have to
burns you
understand
out.
that. Yeah. Oh
You
yeah.
gotta
Yeah. No,
understand,
my hat's off to you guys.
And especially when we're a small boat, like I'm on the Amigo, so we don't have a lot of crew. It's not like we're gonna have one person rotate off all the time.
Right.
No, we're on the deck all the time. There's not a person off.
Yeah. No, it's toughest job. I mean, we did it for how many years, you know? And if you lose that
And the hard
passion
way.
and everything, yeah.
But it sure is fun.
Yeah.
You
That's
can't
why
do it,
we're
yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
You can't complain. I mean, it's just nice to be out on the water, and sometimes you have to step back. I'm out there, and it's like when it's slow or something, I look back. Hey, people are paying to come out here to see this, and I get to get paid to do this and see it. So sometimes you step back and look at it that way.
That's true.
All right. Now we have another controversial subject.
Perfect.
Rick Slater wants to know your opinions on the lovely and lovable and cuddly sea lion.
Oh my god!
Anybody care to opine on that?
He's what do you call it? He's part of society. He helps and he destroys. It causes a lot of headaches when he eats your fish
Yeah. Yeah.
or breaks the bite up.
Yeah. Shuts it all off.
He's God's child.
Yeah. It's a tough deal. I mean,
Yes.
the nice thing to do is throw the seal bombs.
But back in the day, you could get away with that.
Poof, and it doesn't hurt them. That it may,
It scares them a little bit.
yeah, scare them a little bit, but yeah,
Well, I don't like sea lions or seals, whatever you're gonna call them. But the true problem with it is that we take care of them too much. I mean, we find one that's sick and we give them antibiotics and we take them to the mammal center, get them healthy, and send them back out. When natural selection should be getting rid of those animals. And we see right here, we got Bobo out here with a cloudy eye and almost no teeth, and he's an 800-pound, 600-pound sea lion that is like
Yeah.
a dog to us, which isn't good either.
yeah,
And that
Yeah.
animal, if it was, real life, shouldn't even be around.
But he's a shark and the whale's meal.
Yep.
Right.
And the
we don't have
porpoises.
enough of those either.
Yeah, right.
So that's that's part of the problem. I'm not
Oh,
here
yeah.
to say we need to shoot them, and I always say the joke. Oh yeah, let's get a bunch of Native Americans, because they can hunt those. Let them come down, and shoot as many as you can and take them back.
There you go.
So let's get real controversial.
Boy,
But what can you do? Every animal has its place. And,
Yep.
No, that's true.
Nature will take
That's
care
true.
of it.
That's
But
true.
we always say they have better health insurance than we do, because if they get sick, they take care of them for free and let them go.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
yeah.
it's quite a trick.
And
hey, we just got kicked off YouTube. Good going, guys. Just kidding.
Well,
Hey, let's move ahead here. Robert Slingers wants to know what is going on with the diesel engine retrofitting. What is happening with that?
I mean, we're set up as it is for us. I don't know exactly what's going on. I see everybody doing their retrofits, but not with new motors. I mean, from what the law, I still don't think we have those E6 or whatever they are supposed to be. They don't even have the engines for us, so I don't know. I have a 4-stroke on my personal boat, so it's out of my pay grade to know exactly what's going
And
on with that.
Tony and I grew up with old Detroit two cycles, 871s, 1271s.
yeah.
Stuff like that. So it's totally in the blind on that. I'd have to talk to my brother. I mean, they stay up with all that.
I
You
think
know.
there's a way, but I don't think society wants to expose that to us yet. as part of the food chain
Hey, it costs money
Cost.
to do it. It
Cost,
costs a lot of money
exactly.
to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
and charge.
Yeah,
Yep, and
Yeah.
that's the problem. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's nice. We all want to have no oil and no, have a clean environment, but it's just, what can you do?
Yep. Nope, I agree.
All right, David says, good evening all. Jason had a blast on the 2.5 day trip last August. Great food. Danny, do albacore and big eye tuna kind of share the same water? Some big eye were caught in Northern California last
Oh
year.
no, absolutely, absolutely. We used to get the big eyes mixed in with them down in San Diego. I mean, even just below the Coronados, the 425, 371, places like that, you'd have a mix of them. Between the albacore and
But big
the
eye are
eyes.
weird too because I mean, when I
Yeah.
was in Hawaii, you catch big eye out there, and that's tropical waters. So
Yeah.
they're kind of goofy
No.
like bluefin, and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
go all over the place. So
Yep.
They can be in cold or hot water.
All right, Q-Ball says he was on a trip where they pulled off the bite after 45 minutes. Captain said, hey, we are limited out. 4 guys caught like 20 fish each. The rest of us had either none or one. Anything to post limits, that was a drag. So I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
Well, hey, the rule is the top 10% of the fishermen catch all the fish.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And we came about at a time, you guys may not believe this, but
Hook in hand.
you hook in hand, and that's what we do. We'd always pick on the people that needed fish and tell the crew, hey, make sure they're bit.
That's what we do as crew,
Make sure they get them.
Give them a chance.
Make sure
Yep.
they get them in the sack. But we also came from a very competitive deal where our fish counts had to reflected the boat.
Very instrumental.
And yeah, I like killing fish because their reputation was at stake, and that reputation followed all my crew members when they got boats too. So that had something to do with it. But now it's a little different. I've changed my mind. I there's a time where, man, it was a personal thing for me. I didn't want to get. I wanted to highline it if I went out fishing personally. And now I can sit there and go, okay, I'm good. Especially because of, by the time you get your processing bill, then you start thinking twice about it right there.
Right.
You're spending a lot of money to give it away. And that's great. But then I also would have guys come down and say, listen, come down to the dock, take the fish that you want, and then, it's yours.
Yeah.
So
Well, unfortunately, I mean, with, where you could see everybody's fish counts. I mean, back in the day when 976 tuna started off, you had to call to get it or look in the next day. Now you can look and see what the fish counts are. And if you don't have a good fish count, then people aren't going to book. So unfortunately, that's part of it. We have to catch fish. And the other thing, like I said, the better fishermen catch most of the fish because they know how to cast. They know how to get the bait away from the boat. Whereas our last charter, we had a lot of new fishermen out there, which isn't a problem, but they can't get the bait away from the boat. So can I really expect the guys that are catching to stop and let them not catch? I mean, it's nice to have passengers pass off fish, but that's where, as the crew, we'll do the same thing. Like me, you know how many fish I caught last year? Very few, because 95% of them was hook and pass. Or you see somebody having a problem, throw it out, cast it out for them, and hand it off to them and try to show them.
Sure.
And that's where part of it is. Unfortunately, I wish everybody could catch it. We got limits. Everybody catch their 10 fish, but hey, some people catch 30 fish. I mean,
It's always going to be like that too.
and hey, those fish aren't going into their sack.
It's always going to be that
Those
way.
fish that they're catching aren't going in their sacks. They're getting split up. So if you say you don't know what you're doing and you only catch a couple fish, at least you'll know you're going to get fish
Well,
at the end of the trip.
and it's the guys that are doing their homework. They already know before getting on the boat what kind of tackle you're going to need. You cover the span from 15 to 80 pound, and they practice, they go more. So yeah, they're going to catch more fish, and that's just the natural progression.
You can't expect
it's like
to rent-
anything.
Yep,
It's practice, right?
Mhm. And you can't expect to rent one rental rod and come out and think you're going to cover us from trying to fish for halibut at the island to going to fish rockfish with the same rod and reel and all that setup. You think you're going to catch fish, but you think you're really going to do the best you can, where somebody else that's catching them all is using fluorocarbon and using 20 pound instead of 30 pound and a smaller hook instead of the one pack of 7.0 hooks you have when we're using size 1 hooks.
You're right. You're right. One of the things that sticks in my head, one of the best things that my mentor Tanaka, always, I remember him going down to the passenger, like, guys getting upset that he's not catching fish, and I mean, we're firing the bait and it hits the water, set the hook, we're handing them off and stuff. And so this guy that was complaining goes, well, how do you do that? He goes, do you golf? The guy goes, yeah, I golf. He goes, oh, how many days a week do you go to the driving range? Oh, 2, 3 days. So how many days a week do you practice casting? That ended the conversation right there. You know, so you can't come out and be the all-star without practicing. It's like any sport. You know, so you're doing your due diligence, having the exact right hook, lighter line for a lighter hook for you know, a chovy. Uh, I used to weigh my hooks. Know how many people did that? How many people knew that for fly line and anchovy, a number 2 gamakatsu with a ring weighed 350 milligrams. A number 2 mustad, no ring, 450. That's 100 milligrams. Well, you and I can't fill 100 milligrams, but that little chovy can.
Yep.
And the way he swims makes a difference. And it just so happens that that Phil, that hook I'm talking about was the one I used, you know, on that
On the
bluefin
reel.
trip. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of these things that you have to understand. They get very technical. It gets as technical as you want to get,
And being prepared.
but you're doing your homework.
Because
Right.
it changes every day. We might be fishing today
That's right.
with this size hook and this size line, and go out there tomorrow, and we got to fish 60-pound with big hooks, and that's where you have those things as you know that helps you
You
out.
have to go prepared. And like you said, you got to do your homework.
Yep.
So all you kids that are in school
Yeah.
has to do with doing
all
your due
technicians.
And you're
diligence is
so
your
lucky
homework.
because there's so many websites.
Oh
and
yeah,
so many,
we
you know,
didn't have that.
Yeah, you can
We had a
look at
telephone.
No,
any
you had
group.
A
just-
landline, one of these phones.
Yep.
You'd
or
have
you
to-
worked with a good captain and taught you the little secrets,
that was
like
it too.
Iser and
Yeah,
Roger,
exactly.
Roy Peters.
Yep,
Old
that's
school
exactly
guys.
it. That's
Technology.
that's right.
I still
technical.
die. I still die when I'm out there on my personal boat, and I think back to my dad that didn't even have a radar and had a fish finder that printed out the paper,
Oh
the
yeah,
phonometer, and I'm out there with GPS, and I
Smell
can
that-
see every rock and everything. I'm like, it makes you look back and see how lucky we are, and see how
Yeah.
we caught fish back then. To
Yeah,
now.
Oh,
sport
yeah.
fishing is easy now.
yeah.
With
Yeah,
the
back
technology.
then you had to go off of let's see that looks that far.
that
you
white
dead
building
right-
and the
dead-
red
yeah.
stack.
dead
Yeah.
reckoning.
And the Volkswagen were in the
Yeah.
parking lot.
Like the needle we used to fish off of the marine land. That's
Yeah.
how we knew that.
Well, try to find the 43, you know, and stuff like that. You
Any
know, without the
offshore?
scan. Yeah,
Good
Sure.
luck.
it was time and course, and you had to hold
Dead
that
reckoning.
course. You-
Like
so there's
fishing-
a
We're
lot
not
of
out there
things.
with the sextant.
Yeah.
No. It's like Morro Bay.
Yep.
Dead reckoning.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, boys, let's move this along. Tony wants to know albacore where Tommy Holland, Captain Tommy Holland, says, and he says it's totally unconfirmed. He's working on it. 2 albacore recently caught a couple days ago outside of San Nicolas Island. I asked him how far. He said about a block, so 60 miles sounds like to me.
Sure.
And it's unconfirmed at this point, but he's working on it. We'll see. It's just that
60
Tony, conditions are looking really good. A guy that was, it's a commercial albacore boat. He wasn't commercial. He was going to,
Was he going towards the 1908 or
no, he
going
was
towards
going to
Cisco?
Mazatlan to
Oh.
get boat work done. And he said, oh, hell, throw out a couple of feathers. And then, boop, got
Well,
done.
back in the day, in the 70s, the 1908 was really good.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah. No,
I
I
can believe
remember.
that shit. You're talking 100
I
miles
remember.
offshore or more. So, and I heard rumblings they saw them up north already too. So, along with the blue.
I think.
Oh,
we'll
here
see.
we go. All right, David says, Jason, I tipped you and the crew good last year. What a great crew.
That's exactly what I was talking about. They didn't tip us enough.
Oh, yeah. David.
That's
Kim Herbert. Hey, Kim, it's great to see you, my friend. It was a problem for deadheads using the morning jackpot fish on the afternoon ride. Some captains said the deckhands were in charge. Poor reputation, poor service resulted in poor tips. Kim, I got to tell you, man, using the morning fish for the afternoon, I mean, there was a bonita, its head fell off on the scale because it was used
I remember
for like
those
a
days.
week straight.
Herb Curley and those guys on the Sport King, they had a calico that, yeah.
You keep it in
The
the
last
tank?
time
Those
they,
are the 70s
last
and
time,
60s.
yeah, the 60s and 70s, they put it on the scale and the head ripped off from the meat, you know. But that's
It was that old.
there's some shenanigans that went on. This is a long time ago, folks.
It was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
you're
and
talking about-
It was, I don't know. It was,
Well,
It was
Look-
pretty entertaining back
yeah,
then.
it was.
yeah,
It really
Very entertaining.
the pirate days, huh?
yeah, oh, yeah.
At the same time, Kim's right. I mean, if you're on the other end of that, you're like, hey, I just got screwed. You know, so yeah, we totally get that, Kim. Q Ball says, same I just explained to Hunter, I was busy trying to teach my son-in-law how to tuna fish. I don't have a problem catching fish, trust that. Rick Slater, are there any skippies or opa being caught them in good alba years? It's a little early for that, right, Danny?
Yeah, and usually that's skippies. We usually saw them with the little warmer water fish.
Yeah,
They
in the
Yeah.
fall.
usually come in there later in the fall with the yellowfin and stuff. You know, the little warmer water fish. Opas, no, opas would be with the albies a lot of times.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Dan Smith, Danny, Tony, Jason, you guys are the worst. Oh, he's really whipping you guys. You guys are right on the money. It is like a sport, and the best seek out the best coach and work hard and practice the most. That is a huge difference. You guys are right.
There's no doubt about that. It's doing your homework.
How many times do you guys get somebody that says you're right? That doesn't happen every
Nope.
day. God darn. Look at Tony. He's incredulous about it.
Well, it's I think the old school has to come back and share the knowledge with the new school
Oh, that's true.
because they got spoiled with all the new technology.
But in the
But they
same,
forget the
same
old school.
token, same token, I could walk onto the boat and not stay out of the wells because I don't know what any of that stuff is. And
Same
I know
here.
my last pinhead was Brian Kirihara, and he runs the best. I had to kick him off the boat because he was putting too much pressure on himself. He'd ask me, "What do you think about this?" I said, Brian, you see all this stuff? This stuff never existed when I ran a boat. I says, you know more than I'll ever know. You know? And it's true. So all these younger kids, there's a different thing that they've stayed up with
It's like
the
the
technology
computer.
and everything else. Exactly. So I trust in them, and they've always come through.
It'll humble you too, because once you think you know it,
Oh,
that's when it
absolutely.
completely changes.
Absolutely.
How many times I was out there even this year, hoop netting for lobsters, you think you have it down. Oh, the moon and phase and the tides and all this shit, and go out and get a 0. Or the night before.
Oh
you
yeah,
limit it
I
out,
had big plans a lot of times to go
right?
eat humble pie. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And then we were saying, like they said about teaching and everything. Ask. The deckhands are there to teach, and we
Absolutely.
love to teach that stuff.
Absolutely.
The problem is those guys that don't know and don't ask and don't try, and they're we're doing a drift and they're on the wrong side of the boat, halfway up the middle. That's the thing. That's the problem. And you tell them and they don't listen.
But you hit it. You hit it right on the nose. The information is gold. That's valuable. That's probably more valuable a lot of times than catching the fish.
Mm-hmm.
It gets your mind to think, gets you to start wondering, okay, what do I do? What's the progression? Well, if I'm not getting bit, I drop down in line size. Okay, still not getting bit. Maybe drop down in hook
Both sides.
size.
Yep. Smaller
but-
bait.
Right. It's a progression of
Nose
in
hook to
thinking.
butt hook.
You start playing around with your
changing
hook
things
placement. That has a big difference to do with it. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. And so it's keeping your Taka had an old thing. It says, eyes open, ears open, mouth shut. Just watch, and you're gonna learn.
Okay, I see people catch fish on some weird shit, and hey, man, it works sometimes. And that could be.
And you can't tell yourself, I'm not doing that.
Nope.
You do whatever it takes.
It's whatever you're comfortable with.
That's right. That's right.
Think out of the box.
Yep.
That's
Daryl
exactly it.
Shelbourne on the Royal Polaris
Big
just
D.
got a 358.
Yeah, I saw that.
And he told me what he did before he put a bait in the water, did anything, he observed. He took 5 minutes out and watched and saw what was getting bit, what was going on. He ends up with 358. He caught a 258, by the way, guys, in 6 minutes using 70 pounds of drag. A normal man would get pulled in the water.
Big D's an animal.
Yeah, he is.
And he's got the talent, he's got the knowledge.
And he's one hell of a nice
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, I mean, so, what are you going to do?
And
He's got it all.
and a nice
There's a
rail to use on that boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. All right. Hey, Patrick and Sarah, I'm booked on a 2-day trip, leaving Monday on the Pacific Queen. Any last minute suggestions? Also thinking of trying to jump on a full day trip on Sunday or a half day trip. Pretty tough weather moving into Sunday. I think it
Sunday
mellows
will be all
out.
right. Sunday
Yeah.
should be all right,
So-
especially for just a day trip.
Not sure what they're going to do. I do know the Pacific Queen is an awesome ride with a great crew. And if anybody will find those bluefin, it could be them. They may opt to not do bluefin. The Royal Star's on a 3-day trip right now. And he's fishing the coast for yellowtail. He didn't even go out there. The last score that I heard come out of the bluefin area, a 3-day trip on the Polaris Supreme, 3 bluefin tuna. There's been a lot of blanks. So you may end up down at Collinette catching yellows and nice big rockfish. hard to say, Patrick. I'm going to leave that in the hands of the guys on the Pacific Queen. Anything you guys want to add? Anything? to
Yeah,
that?
it might be that, fishing the coast and then try that night thing on a 2-day. You have one night. They might try the night thing for that
True,
one night and
true,
then hit the beaches
true.
again. That would be my best bet, Especially looking at the way Ensenada's going and all that. So the farther you get down on the coast, you're at least going to get into, groupers and rockfish and all that kind of cool
And
stuff.
a lot of times those bluefin will stage outside, just down below,
Mm-hmm.
too. So that's another thing down below, putting a bun down through there.
Yeah, Ensenada is
Outside.
going full rack down there right now.
Yeah.
I told my wife I'm going down there for the Viejas, and she slapped me when I said that. Viejas,
Right.
in case you don't know, it has two meanings. One is a sheep's head, and two is a hot chick. So you can see which one she. I said, hey, it's a dumb fish. What are you getting mad about?
She's like,
Calm
sure
down.
it is.
All right, live free, die free. Danny, ever use titanium hooks? Back in the 80s, I used to be able to buy them. Now I'm trying to find them.
No, I didn't. Back in the 80s and stuff, we were using being on the boat, we're going through hooks like crazy. So we were just using mustads back in those days.
Right, the cheap stuff.
The cheap stuff, but in the 91 74s,
You know,
92 158s.
I think I saw some of those on that Temu ad, TEMU.
Uh-huh.
It's a website from China. They sell a lot of fishing tackle. They're cheap. Hooks, sinkers.
Titaniums, yeah.
I think I saw some
Oh, that's
titanium there.
interesting, yeah.
I'm
But,
sure you can find
we-
some slow pitch stuff for that.
Yeah.
But,
And there's things too, for specialty things like for bluefin for touchy fish. Like I said, how many people quantified it and weighed out the milligrams? How many of them know that number two gamakatsu with their little ring is 350 milligrams and the same size mustad is 450 with no ring? So there's little things that we did back then that make a difference. So when you get a touchy bite, you have an edge. So
Yeah.
you're just bit every cast.
Well,
It's not magic, that poor little chovy or whatever it is got that much less weight to haul around.
Right.
We can't feel that 100 milligrams, but I guarantee you the bait can.
Well, then it comes down to, you just on hook size. Oh, we're using 1/0s or we're using ones. Well, from an owner to, any other hook is going to be a different size. They're
Yeah.
not standard.
And how many
so-
guys have put it on a scale and weighed them?
Mhm,
So that's
exactly. That's a
another
big
thing.
deal for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, boys, a couple more questions. And unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up. I really don't want to. This is a great podcast.
Woo.
You guys are doing fantastic. Who knows? Maybe Tony will give us a little more time. Patrick, or perhaps not, said he had a trip this weekend. It got canceled. And Patrick is asking San Diego fleet. I would check with the San Diego guys, but my understanding is the new low end threw in the towel. I could be wrong. Check with the landings, Patrick. But that was for the weekend. I think by Sunday, as Jason pointed out, the weather starts to come down. Fish guy, I don't have an issue with certain fishermen catching more fish on any trip. I want the time slot for myself to catch my own limit. Do you want to go in early because people caught my fish?
Well, if you went in early, good luck to you because we have very few trips that go in early because we caught limits. Unless it's a
Yeah.
charter that we catch our 2 bluefin and it's like we're out
Yeah.
of here. So we've had that happen on a 2-day and catch our limit and be like, we're going home. So we've done that. But hey, if you're on trips where they're coming home, that's few and far between. So you must have been on a decent trip.
Yeah, you know what? And really watch. I mean, generally, if it's that good where everybody's getting limits, watch, talk to the crew member. They certainly will help you out. I don't know if you won't take a hook in hand, but I mean, whatever it takes. Sometimes just pull in on the fish. If a crew member hooks and hands it to you, that may change your attitude and
It
may
makes
give you a
everybody
different.
happy.
And it gives you, your next cast after that. It may build your confidence, and
Well,
that might be the thing that does it.
Well, there's
Who knows?
something to be said to catch a couple. Yeah, I've seen it where even good fishermen, the first few fish are farmed. Oh, everybody's tackle's going everywhere, and then get further on in the day, after you've caught a couple of fish, then you start getting your stuff dialed in, your drags and
Yeah.
your knots and everything. Because I've seen good fishermen back spool on the first cast on something because it's the first thing in the morning. So
The problem I saw all those years of running boats, Tony, we've all seen this, is you got guys that have fished for a long time and they expect to come out that first day and just dial it in and get them first cast. And if you haven't practiced and if you haven't done that, I could make a first cast sometimes almost backlash, and I'll just laugh because I go, well, what are you thinking, dummy? You haven't practiced for a year, Did I expect to go out there and nail one like when
And
I
your
was
line's-
running a boat?
Your
No,
line's
it's
not
not.
wet.
And it's exactly, it's not going to happen. So, don't get discouraged. It happens to everybody, but it's like anything, practice, and the more you fish, the better you're going to get,
And
and
ask
that's
questions.
what it takes. And ask questions. They're, the crew's there and
Talk to the
they're
crew
more
like
than
Phil
willing to
said.
help you. Yeah.
All right, boys. Tony's here with his switchblade, so we're gonna wrap this
Okay.
up. It sounds like some boys have canceled, but I highly recommend you check with the Landings Houses. Great show, guys. Cue Ball was talking about 5 deadheads on every trip, and they've got it all dialed in. Yeah, it gives them an advantage. Charles Link, nothing colder than yesterday's hot dog. Buzz Brizendine used to use that a lot. Cue Ball, 2 fish limit man. All right, boys, say goodnight to everybody. What a great
Hey,
show.
thank you guys
Yeah.
for coming on, man. It
Great
was
show,
beautiful
great show.
having you guys.
Great
Jeez.
show.
Tony, yep.
Pleasure.